This is Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions with Alistair Lynch, Tom Rockcliffe and Dylan Leach.
Welcome to this week's Unpopular Opinions, Ned's punting podcast. A massive week of AFL footy, a great round, a few upset results, a few results that we didn't see coming. We're going to digest a bit of that in the first segment. Then we're going to look forward to an exciting 3 rounds to go. See how the rest of the teams shape up. But joining me each and every week, as he does, normally for the snapshot, but again, Dylan's not here. So, Ryan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, boys. Good to be back. Lots to dive into this week. 2 big blowouts over the weekend and a massive weekend coming up as well. So, looking forward to it.
28-odd points up, your Hawkers, and just stopped.
Yes, just driving the knife in even further to top off the show. How good. Good on you, Matt.
And he's here every week, the superstar from the Brisbane Lions, 3 flags, did it all, full back, full forward. He played everywhere. Alistair Lynch.
Hey, fellas. Excuse the hat. I haven't got the product of putting into my long hair like you have.
Bring
there.
back the mullet, I say.
Well, we're working on it. Yeah. And we'll take it back to the wood like yours. That's the other consideration, I reckon. But how good? Now, seriously, is it the best footy season ever? I thought last year, and especially with the crescendo into the grand final, was as good a season as I can remember. But the fact that where we are with the ladder at the moment and the form variations is absolutely incredible. I'd say the best ever. And you almost look at 75% of the coaches. At some stage during the year, they were all getting the arse. Yeah. They were. What about? I remember at halftime we were talking about on the weekend Port Adelaide's result. Kenny Hinkley was going to be lynched 6 weeks ago. Now he might be knighted. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. The
swings and roundabouts, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's why it's such a great season. And to predict, I mean, I think the Lions should be and are flag favourites, I would have thought. But they're going to have to win probably 15 straight to win the flag. In a season like this, is it possible? I'm not sure. Not sure.
I think it's possible, yeah. The betting markets have certainly shifted around. Brisbane in the favourites. This is probably your area, Ryan.
Yeah,
we'll get
stop
to
cutting
it.
me grass.
We'll get into it in a snapshot. But then Sydney, they're on the slide. The Dogs equal second favourites. Carlton, well, where are they at? And the Giants and Port Adelaide. So there's 3 clubs on about $9 on the Neds app or website as of recording at Tuesday morning at about 9 o'clock.
Carlton. So Carlton are... I think there's still a legitimate chance to win the flag. They could miss. They could miss finals.
It's basically an elimination final this week against the Hawks.
Well, yeah, they dropped that. I mean, they dropped that.
It's hard from there.
Yeah. And they could. The way the Hawks are going, I mean, they had 3/4 of great footy on the weekend. Probably just didn't quite score enough. And maybe the difference for the first 3/4 was Jesse Hogan just clunking them. So that was a whole match-up issue I think Hawthorn had. They would reflect on poorly. But no, Carlton could miss. So massive game this week.
And getting back to your point about the best season, my unpopular opinion, which we normally do off the top, is that the AFL give them a bit of a rap because it is the most exciting season heading into with 3 weeks to go. As much as they do wrong, and we've bagged them all year for their flaws and whatnot.
We haven't forgotten.
She's on the board now. But the season and the way it's shaped up, it's as even as probably we've seen. Even the teams down the bottom are starting to play some better footy as well. We've seen West Coast get the job done against the Gold Coast, who refused to win on the road, refused to show up. But Richmond, North Melbourne, that was exciting enough.
It was.
The Adelaide Crows, their best is good enough, but they just can't sustain it for long periods of time. St Kilda, we know their issues there, but rounding out, it's probably down to final 8. Are we willing to put a line through Essendon, Hawthorn, Collingwood, Melbourne, or are we still...
I'm not putting a line through Collingwood just yet. I think they could be the one team sitting outside the 8 that could come in and shake some things up in the finals. Losing De Goey, though, that does hurt their chances.
But you look at it does hurt their chances. But you look at Collingwood, so they're a game out of the 8, but they're 12% out of the 8 as well. So essentially, they're 2 games behind. So they're going to find that hard.
Sydney and Brisbane in the next 2 weeks.
Yes,
and then Melbourne to finish as well.
They're cooked. But I wouldn't write off Carlton falling over. Like they should. They've got the players there.
They've got a softish draw as well.
Yeah, they should get there, and they'd want to get there. I'd think it's pretty much pretty much done, but how's our tipping gone this year? How's everyone's tipping gone this year?
It's been shocking, yeah. No, our multi, we'll get to that later, but multi fell over by a single point this week on Fremantle, who were pretty stiff to lose that game, I would have thought. They won pretty much every major statistical category except for inside 50s, and fell over.
Quite incredible they didn't win that. To Carlton, they've got St Kilda, West Coast and Hawthorn, so they probably make it on the back of what they've got. But the Gold Coast Suns, just quickly before we move on, they're not... How they haven't played finals this year is incredible. They've played Richmond twice, North Melbourne twice, West Coast twice, and they're not going to play finals.
Softest possible draw, and you're right. They've got some, and we've said this before, they're missing that intangible, whatever that is, that grit, just to get it done when you have to. And you look through some individual players and you think, Rao has a crack. Anderson has a crack, but they do drop away on the road. I think they've got some real holes in the character. And obviously, he identifies that. He's frustrated, so I think they're going to have a very hard pre-season, and it would all be about moments and grit and resilience. And I think on that, now that the Mac Andrew experiment for him to go forward looks successful, he looks dangerous forward.
Yeah.
I reckon whilst season's over for them, whilst you're looking at talent and the inconsistency of Jed Walter now, I think this week, they name him Thursday night, he goes to centre half back. He plays the last 3 games centre half back because he's a competitor and he's an athlete, but he's that. Well, I mean, the modern term is that footy craft. He basically hasn't got much idea with that at the moment. Like, not questioning his work rate, put him to centre half back, play back shoulder and compete. Give him a lot of confidence going into next year. Gets to play on the best forward and learns from them, I reckon. So you should be doing that.
I think Dimmer can't distance himself from it either, because the week before against Brisbane, they lost by what they knew. They let Zorko run around by himself. They let Lachie Neale run around by himself. And they had close to 40 again, which they did in the first Q clash. So I think there'll be plenty of lessons for the Gold Coast Suns there. The big story out of the weekend, though, was the game over, the 2 Saturday night games, obviously McGovern having that set shot, but the big story was Sydney. Their inability to even show up at Adelaide Oval, go down by 112 points. They've been by far and away the best team in the competition for majority of the season. They've lost 5 of their last 6 and have their pants pulled down the way they did.
The only game they've won over the last 6 weeks was against North Melbourne at the SCG, where I reckon they kicked a goal late to head north at quarter time because it was going to be another disastrous first quarter. I think it used to be, the old saying used to be 90% of the games played above the shoulders. Absolutely. They've had a psychological drop-off because they were comfortable. Their urgency, the way they play, their commitment for the team for the first 3 quarters of the season was unbelievable. And it's not a conscious thing. You think, we're home. That just subconscious edge comes off. You'd imagine this is the only reason, only excuse, because, as you were talking before, most of their players were back. They've got a couple of injuries or had a couple of injuries. But the reality is that there's that drop-off because they were comfortably on top. This week, it ramps up so much now. Can they turn around a 112-point defeat to a team that was on its knees itself 6 weeks ago and bounce back and roll Collingwood? That's going to be a huge question. Great game.
I got a message from Tommy Jonas, who was calling the game for Triple M, and he goes, "What's going on here?" And I didn't play in too many teams that sat on top of the ladder for long periods of time, 2020, but we never got blown away by 112 points. Did you ever play in a game when you were successful through that Brisbane era and just get blown away? Because I don't know, what would Horse walk in at halftime and say? Or even Ken to Port Adelaide? Because
Horse was lost for words in that post-game presser. He had no idea what to say.
But even Ken as well. What would you say? Just keep doing what you're doing?
There'd be a fair bit of green numbers on the board, wouldn't they? That's what you'd have to do. You'd be trying to look for little things to focus on, but he wouldn't be able to focus on too much. What does Horse do? I don't know what he's done during the game. You can't do this every week, so he might have already gone to this space. But do you tear the paint off the wall this week in a review? Again, you can't do that every session, so he might have used that. But I think at some stage you've got to pull that lever. And so back to your question, the difference between us and the Sydney Swans is through our golden era, we're never on top.
Yeah.
So we were always chasing, whether it be 2001 when we almost had to win every game to play finals, then to top 4, then to get a home prelim.
So you always had that hunger there.
Absolutely. And so we'll never that side that was just way out in front like the Swans do. And what happens is everyone focuses on the best team in the competition. So for a long way out, everyone's focusing on it. And we've spoken about it, and I suppose I've done a lot of the games. You can see every week how teams are taking away the corridor footy and pushing the Swans wide, and it's having an impact. And, I think this will be a fascinating week of training for the Swans and a fascinating game Friday night at the SCG in front of another full house.
Go back to Friday night as well, Ryan. The Western Bulldogs took on the Demons. The Demons maybe potentially the end of an era that we know they've had. Petrarca's not there, a few sore boys. Bontempelli, is this year that he finally wins a Brownlow?
You'd have to think so, yeah. I mean, it's going to be very close. I think Lockie Neal's in the mix as well. Heaney, if he'll pile up the votes from earlier in the year. But the Demons, they're a fascinating team right now over these final few weeks. You wonder if they just give guys like Oliver and Gawn a bit of a rest and reset for next year. I'm not really sure where they go from here. It's hard to see them playing finals. Do you think they rest some of those guys and just look ahead?
I don't think they'll rest. I wanted to play every week. Most of my career I was out of finals, but I'd never go for surgery early if I could avoid it. I think one year I did it. Port Adelaide went in for shoulder surgery once our season was over, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, just to give yourself the opportunity. But I don't think they'll rest them, will they?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It depends we don't know what the injuries are and the state of the bodies. I think you have an obligation to give yourself the best chance to win the next flag. They can't do it this year. And I think Gary Lyon was saying on the couch about Oliver having a hand injury. If it's a bad one, I'd get him out, get the operation so he starts pre-season straight away and has a full pre-season, because as we know, once you miss a chunk of your pre-season, you're chasing your tail, especially with the shoulders. That's where if someone has got a shoulder, get them out, get it recode, because that's basically a rehab of 2 or 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. So you're going to miss a chunk of pre-season. So I'd get them in, but with the focus being on next year. Now, whether you're going to have a fit person to trade or a fit person for pre-season, I think you've got to do it. Got to do it now. You unpopular opinion. I'll go mine from my game, Hawks GWS on the weekend. Unpopular opinion might be that regardless of who wins the Coleman medal, Jesse Hogan's a full forward.
All-Australian.
All-Australian. All-Australian full forward. I think he's the dominant contested marking player in the league, and it makes a difference. I mean, they can just kick it long to him and he's knocking people out of the road and just going clunk. He's reaching over the top of players. So I'd have him for his first All-Australian jacket and have him in there whether he wins or not, because I think he's, 2 goals in front of Charlie Curnow at the moment.
Yeah.
And Charlie Curnow, what do you know?
Well, he asked me last week if the Coleman race was over. I said, put a line through everyone. Charlie Curnow's got it.
The market's shifted a lot. We'll talk about that in the snapshot, but yeah, it's interesting.
Well, it is interesting because Charlie Curnow has got a game against West Coast coming up as well.
Yeah.
Now, he kicked 19 against West Coast last year. He had a 10 and a 9 last season. So I think it's still well and truly alive. And I'm thinking maybe Charlie, he's got to find some form after Bagel on the weekend. But I think even if Jesse doesn't win the Coleman medal, he should be All-Australian full forward.
He's probably the story of the year. For the journey that he's been on, like early pick to Melbourne, didn't fall his way, for whatever reason, didn't work.
Well, his first year, you're thinking, shit, how good's this bloke? Then had some troubles off field.
Went back to Fremantle, didn't quite click for him for whatever reason. Again, it seems like he's found his home and his happy place up there in Greater Western Sydney.
Yeah, and you say happy place, absolutely. You know, I suppose we've got the privilege now of having been in there. Now we get to interview some players and be around the players. And you see some players come up to you and they're just having the best time of their life. And that's Jesse Hogan, whether you see him before the game, after the game. This young fella who's been through some hard times is just glowing with joy and just loving what he's doing at the moment, and so are his teammates. And it's great to see. And, I think it's a given. He's All-Australian this year.
And your Hawks, they just couldn't quite get the job done. They looked impressive again for 3 quarters, but just...
Yeah. They're scoring quite well off turnover in those first few quarters, and then it just kind of fell away once Toby Green and Hogan took over in that final term. Sicily was a little bit disappointing in the last quarter as well. A couple of silly free kicks against him. It feels a lot like that Port Adelaide loss earlier in the year. One that could probably come back and haunt us when it comes time to whether or not we play finals. But disappointing.
Massive turnaround, isn't it? Like to go down, they were 50-odd points up against Port, and then couldn't get the job done. Like they win those 2 games, they're sitting comfortably in the 8 now and nearly locked away. 52 points, they'd be sitting equal.
No, absolutely. And Sam Mitchell put the onus on the coaching staff in the post-game press conference as well, so he owned up to it that they didn't.
That was great.
They didn't adjust, so yeah.
Yeah, it was great that he took a bit of responsibility there as well. Brent Daniels running around by himself was a bit of an issue put on a clinic. And that's where I think during the game we were talking about any team that had the team that had the ball movement and speed was Hawthorn. We didn't see the run from GWS until that Daniels goes in the midfield, Toby goes in there, then sneaks forward. Then that speed came back. But no, I still, from a neutral supporter, look at Hawthorn and think, how good are Hawthorn? How good are this team? It's exciting. And yes, it looks like it will cost them finals. These couple of come from behind defeats that they've had is but exciting. I would have thought the hope around the club, the class of your coach to accept responsibility at the end of the game as well, is good for the future.
We spoke about scars last week. I think that Port Adelaide game and this one are the scars that Hawthorn probably has from this season, and then they learn from that. Moving forward, hopefully.
But they play with a lot of enjoyment, and I'm not sure whether you caught Adam Kingsley's post-game with all the parents in the room.
How cool was that? Yeah.
But he spoke about just going out there and the way they played in the last quarter, and I think the first response was it was fun. It's so often forgotten about in AFL footy. We're coached to an inch of our lives, but your fundamental of going out there and having fun and enjoying being with each other, it's so important still, I think, that you can go out there and play with freedom. And then the Giants did that in the last quarter. They just played with freedom, took the game on and played with fun and got the result.
Yeah, well, if you're scoring and winning, it's fun. Or is it you go out and have fun, then you win? So I think
there's catch-22. Yeah. Obviously, it's always going to be fun when you're winning, but
that's right. And I thought it was fantastic to get that insight, and GWS do it as all the clubs do, give you an insight into what's going on internally, and to allow that vision to get out with the families there. And what the young kids say at the end, they didn't give up or something like that, or. Yeah, there was one comment from one of the supporters which was great, but true reflection.
Words of inspiration.
Yeah, it was. It was very good.
And let's go to the most informed team in the competition since the bye, I suppose. I think they were 13th after the bye, the Brisbane Lions, and they've gone bang within a space of 6-7 weeks. They're now sitting second on the ladder and Premiership favourites. Their footy is as good as anyone in the competition. I spoke last week about potentially their smaller forwards. If they start to have an impact, Zach Bailey, now that he's back, Cam Rayner looks like a different player, finally fulfilling that potential that we all know he had. Charlie Cameron looked a bit better as well. They're going to be tough to beat.
Clearly the form side of the competition. What's that, 9 in a row they've won? It's just whether they can sustain it in a season that is so competitive with so many ups and downs. I mean, Sydney Swans had a 10-game winning streak and they've fallen off the cliff. But the reason I think they can keep going is the Cam Rayner. I mean, he just adds to that midfield depth that he wasn't really doing. He was going in there for a couple of minutes and wasn't having a massive impact prior to this. But now he's that dynamic power midfielder that can go forward and kick goals as well. So, no, he's got the De Goey, Dustin Martin type role.
He looks confident, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Even that out at Brookwater Golf Club last week, even won the comp with 47 points.
Really?
47? Wow. 47 points. So I knew he was going to have a good game on the weekend. I should have given you that insight for the... for your tip, for your multi.
Yes, of course, you're not allowed to do that, but let's timestamp it. I want to test you before we get to the snapshot. Grand final day, who's there after round 21? Who are we selecting to be there on grand final day?
Well, I'll go. Well, Brisbane can't miss, can they?
Well, I think we'd all have Brisbane. I have Brisbane in there.
Well, so Brisbane could quite easily finish on top, and they should have get themselves a prelim final, so into the grand final. So I'd go Brisbane. Geez, I mean, the Swans have dropped off, haven't they? I mean, and then I could quite easily see Brisbane Bulldogs grand final.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, Dogs are the team that they're in form coming into the finals. They're dangerous.
And they've got the equipment. So we know the midfield, so they'd compete exceedingly well with Brisbane's midfield. Brisbane with their tools, and whether they'll go back with Hipwood. Hipwood and Danaher, the tools at 203, 204 centimetres. All of a sudden now the Dogs match up well there. They put pressure on with their forward line. I think that'd be a great grand final. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I tend to agree. My heart says Port Adelaide as well, just because I know that it's probably unlikely, but their form's been incredible. They blew the Western Bulldogs away, came up, lost to the Gold Coast, beat Richmond comfortably.
With the Gold Coast one, though, they had 3 injured players.
Yeah, 3 injured players, so there's excuses there. Go to Melbourne, beat Carlton on Friday night footy, and then blow away who we all thought was probably the best team by 112 points. Their form stacks up. Whether they can sustain it and continue to do it, Radaglia going forward is a different look for him. Whether Marshall can find his way back into the team or whether he has to go back, because Radaglia is a different option now in that front half, and they look good with Georgiades, Dixon. They're all sort of starting to fire at the right time of year. But I think I'm with you two. If I was to sit here now, round 21, I'd say Brisbane and the Western Bulldogs.
So your third pick then, Port Adelaide.
Yep.
How happy are you on the back of you reached out to Kenny Hinkley, 6-7 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I reckon it was 7 weeks ago. And obviously a very difficult time for him and the club. And how not satisfied because the job's not done, but how are you feeling watching Kenny from afar? And have you spoken to him lately?
No, just an occasional text here and there, but everyone within the club, like it would have been walls closing in after Brisbane touched them up. So like Chris Davies has been the footy manager there for a long period of time. It was starting to burden them a little bit, but they're certainly playing with freedom and look like a different team. So you're just happy for them. You've got those relationships. Kenny, obviously, you go back 6-7 weeks, they wanted his head. Tredre made a mistake on radio and agreed with the caller, and then since then they've been able to come together as a group, and that's the most impressive thing, I think, when you can come together when the chips are down and find a way to get through and win games of footy and win impressively. Again, they've got a tough 3 weeks ahead of them. Melbourne this week over there, the Crows, the showdown, we know that anything can happen there as well, and then you go to the last game of the season, they take on Fremantle over in Perth. So
they could still miss.
They could still miss finals. So we could be sitting here in 3 weeks and go, gee, they've missed. But I don't think they will. I think they definitely win at least one of them. I think they win this week against Melbourne. So sets up as a mouth-watering last 3 weeks of the season, and most exciting because we sit here and we're sort of guessing 2 teams. But I don't think you could discount anyone in the top 8 to play in the grand final.
Can we talk that team you just mentioned there, Fremantle? Because that's the other club I had in mind when you asked about who can make it to the grand final. I think there's a sneaky chance. I don't often look back at a loss and say that was a good loss, but I think last week is a game they can really learn a lot from. Midfield's absolutely flying. Sarong and Brayshaw, 30-plus touches again last week. And we know how well they set up behind the ball. I think they could be a team that, if they can win in Melbourne through the finals, they're definitely a contender.
Well, they've got big 3 weeks. They've got 3 top 8 teams, Geelong, Giants and Port Adelaide. So they got 3rd, 4th and 5th heading to finals. So they're pretty much playing elimination final, not elimination finals, but if they lose all 3, they potentially could slip out as well. So they're going to have to win, but they're doing it impressively because we speak about Hawthorn and how exciting they are. Hawthorn are the 4th youngest team in the competition and 4th least experienced. Fremantle are 5th. The 5th least experienced team and 5th youngest. So what they're doing and what they've been able to do this season, it's quite incredible. And potentially, if they win the next 3, set themselves up, get a home final, the home final is going to be key to them.
Definitely.
If they can get a home final and then somehow win a home prelim, then they can potentially go through as well.
Oh, yeah. But back on to the other one that we tipped, the Bulldogs. So they've got 15th place Adelaide this week in Adelaide, Albert. Then 17th place North Melbourne, and then finish off last round at Mars, so up in Ballarat. Against the Giants.
It's a big game, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. At worst, well, you could be playing off for a final spot, but that'd be a top 4 home ground advantage spot. It'd be a massive game in Ballarat.
All right, well, let's jump into the snapshot. Very, very difficult multi-loss last week. So we're going to kick Lynchy out, get the snapshot done, and then call him back in.
All the betting trends you need to know from the world of footy. This is the Snapshot.
Commiserations to anyone that backed our multi last week. We'll get into that in just a second, Rocky. It was another stiff loss for us, but I've got a couple of big questions for you this week on the Snapshot. We're going to talk about the big game on Saturday, Brisbane taking on GWS. Probably game of the round, first versus fourth battle. Giants back on the right foot last week against the Hawks, as we've already spoken about. Lions, bit of a slow start against the Saints, but all their big names coming through with the goods. Rayner, McCluggage, Lockie Neal, big in the touches. We go back earlier in the year, though. The Giants won by 54 points in round 7 against the Lions, rather. Tom Green had his hands all over the footy that day. And we've already touched on Jesse Hogan at the start of the show and the form that he's in. So I'm curious to see how you think the Lions attack him defensively.
Yeah, I think they'll probably send Harris Andrews or the like to him. Harris is one of the best defenders in the competition. You go back to that game, and these teams are in completely different positions. That was Anzac Day, or Anzac round. Sorry, the Giants were 6-1 after that. The Lions may have been 1-6 or thereabouts, but. You lean towards Brisbane. Their best is as good as anyone. You speak about what they did at centre bounce last week. The Giants, they gave up the first 8 centre clearances or 9 clearances. If they do that against the Lions, they'll be 7 goals down.
Easily.
Yeah, particularly at the Gabba. So they're going to have to make sure they're on in the midfield battle. You want to limit Hogan's ability. I think he'll kick 2 or 3. I don't think he'll kick a big bag this weekend. I think the Lions' defence will stand up well against him. I'd imagine he'll get the Harris Andrews matchup, although they may look to free Harris up and come third man up. So Hogan will have his work cut out. Kelly potentially comes back in as well for the Giants. So it sets up as a ripping contest, second v fourth. Ramifications for both teams. Brisbane win this, they can potentially, if things don't go Sydney's way on Friday night, they potentially are on top of the ladder.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake. Brisbane did shut Hogan down well when they last met, held him to just that 1 goal, but I guess the catch-22 with that is Jake Riccardi and Callum Brown both kick 3 each, so that's where things could get interesting for the Lions. We'll keep the chat, though, on Jesse Hogan because I want to pivot to the Coleman medal where you basically declared last week that it's a one-horse race. Curno's going to walk in with it. He's got it by the length of the Flemington Straight. And now here we are. The market's fluctuated. Jesse Hogan, 5 goals against my Hawks last week. Now into $2 to win the Coleman. And Curnow had a quiet game. And he's at about $1.80. Who do you think, before I get into the market and ask you the real serious questions, are you still confident on Curnow?
Yeah, I think so, just with who they've got to play. But Hogan deserves to probably win it. He's been outstanding. You don't expect Curnow to go goalless and Hogan to kick 5. So if that happens once more, it's probably game, set, match. But Hawthorn and then West Coast for Curnow, I think, and then St Kilda is opportunity to kick probably another 10 to 15, maybe even 20 goals in the last 3 weeks, which is crazy when you think about it. Could get hold of West Coast, could get hold of Hawthorn as well, depending on how those matchups work. So still lean towards Curnow, but Hogan, as Lynchy spoke about a little bit earlier, he's probably the full forward in the All-Australian team.
Absolutely, yeah. And GWS has the Lions this week, then they got Freo, then they got the Dogs down in Ballarat. That's a very tough 3 weeks ahead for him. All right, we've got to get into the multi. Last week was another, we've had a couple of these this year where we've gone down by a couple of points, and Fremantle let us down last week.
Yeah, they did. So we were almost smoking the Cubans, ready to go down into the valley, buy some Chinese for lunch and sit back and enjoy. But started on Saturday night. The Pies got the job done. You took them at the line. So.
And you didn't like it, but yep, they were there.
I was a bit nervous, but yeah, we're probably lucky Carlton didn't kick straight.
Yep.
What was the line? About 10?
I think it was 8.5.
8.5. So we snuck in there and then you just got it done again. I wasn't nervous at all watching the Giants Hawks.
Yeah, my heart was, obviously with
heart
Hawthorn.
And head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a tough battle. Yeah, Giants fell in that final term, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, about I suppose about 5 o'clock on Sunday. I thought we were pretty much home. Brisbane up by about 50 odd points at half time against St Kilda. That one's locked away, and Fremantle, they're about 3 or 4 goals up, or big enough gap to win
to
against.
Feel confident.
To win against Essendon halfway through the last quarter, and then they stop, and the Bombers find a way and beat us by a point.
Yeah, it's the less said about it, the better. It would have been nice to get a second one at home, but alas, we press on. We still got 3 weeks of home and away footy before the finals.
NRL, how have you gone in that? None?
None. I'm trying to think what happened. Yeah, and last week it was 2 out of 4 legs, and Giral just can't.
So we're ahead of the
tip a winner,
NRL.
so-
Yeah, well, let's just blame him.
Yeah, I do anyway. So
NRL expert who knows nothing.
yeah, shots fired. Let's look ahead to this week. I have gone with West Coast plus 8.5 against North Melbourne. I know you don't like this because it's down in Hobart. Always a tough place to beat the Roos down there, but I think West Coast is playing some good footy. Should be a close game. And I've gone Essendon minus 12.5 for all the obvious reasons. The Suns just can't wear the white shorts, as you've already said. And this is a must-win for the Bombers.
Yeah, it certainly is. Keep Essendon's finals chance alive. I don't mind it. I'm just not sure. I never feel confident going with West Coast and North Melbourne in a multi. But moving on, I'm going to take Sarong. I'm going player markets. We're recording a little bit later this week, so the players' markets are up and about on the Neds app. I'm taking Sarong 30+. I think he'll get the job done against the Cats. He's had an outstanding season, maybe a little bit of a smoky for the Brownlow as well. Ooh. It's going to be, that should be a good night.
Should be, yeah.
The Brownlow medal count, Dacos, Bontempelli,
Heaney, Neil.
Heaney.
Yep.
Like there's a number of players that could potentially win it. And then we're shifting our attention to Sunday afternoon final game, going back to the Well, who I said on radio during the week, probably the best player over the last 6 years, and that's probably discrediting. He's probably 8 years or something like that. He's the number one player in the competition for me, Marcus Bontempelli, 2+. I think he'll go about it the right way. The Crows might try and put some attention into him, but I don't think you can stop him from hitting the scoreboard.
Nah, I can't disagree with you there. I don't know how the Bont doesn't have a Brownlow yet himself. To recap, we've got West Coast plus 8.5 against North. We've got the Bombers to cover against the Suns, Caleb Sarong 30+ against the Cats, and the Bont 2+ against Adelaide Crows, $13.50 for this one.
Juicy, I think we're due.
You say it every week and it fills me with confidence, but yeah, we've got to get one up. So let's cross our fingers, Rocky, and we'll do it all again next week.
Beautiful. Good on you, Ron. Well, I'm feeling very confident about the multi this week. I think we will get our second one, Ryan.
Oh, you've said that before, mate. You've said that before.
Snapshot. Well, we went down by a couple of points, 1 point, 2 points, depends which way you look at it. I think we'll get the job done. We're going to jump into round 22, have a little bit of a preview. But before we get to that, we've got to speak about Richmond. He's not here, Dylan. He's down there. I don't even know where he is. He might be in Sydney. He's at the Opera House, maybe singing. Well, he doesn't know where he is, I don't think. He's doing tours of King Street or whatever it is down there, King's Cross, sorry, and he thinks he's in Paris. But
what he hasn't got with him though is the duffel coat. He's chucked that.
He's thrown that out. He's off the Tigers. They potentially get the wooden spoon.
I don't know if potentially is the right word. I feel like it's a certainty almost right now. I'm just curious to see what you boys think Richmond does moving forward now. Like, do they look at trading some of these guys like Shea Bolton, Willie Rioli during the off-season? Who are they building around? Because they're still competitive, and that's the good part about this. It's not like they're going to win the spoon like North did, and they're playing really, really bad footy. We're in the hunt last week, so what do they do going ahead?
They're going to have to be aggressive, aren't they? I don't think Fremantle would give up 2 first-rounders for Bolton. I wouldn't. They may have to pay a little bit over for him, but he may be a first-rounder. I don't think he's worth 2 first-rounders. They'll want to get some talented kids through the doors. Their top-end talent, they just haven't been able to get them on the park. Lynch, Prestia, Martin, these guys. So when you lose a chunk of your premiership core, which the Lions went through it as well, and then your good players and your senior players aren't out there as well, it makes it very difficult for them. So they probably need a reset to a degree. I think they will entertain the idea. Daniel Rioli up to the Suns. He's been linked with Dimmer pretty heavily. Whether you can get a player out of the Gold Coast,
I have to.
You have to get probably...
Yeah, you got to play hardball as well, I reckon. You can't... Yeah, and you need to get some talent in. It is a rebuild time, but the balance up, you can't get rid of all your experience because they're the ones that are going to build that culture at the club and help these new kids develop. So I think, if someone's disengaged or there's a reason to go home with Bolton or Rioli's sort of checked out, but you've got to get something back for it. It's got to be worth the trade. You just can't send guys off, for nothing. And do you look at, and does a club that's near the top look at a Tom Lynch? Could you get something for Tom Lynch? Like he can take you from a top 8-ish team to a premier if he can get on the field. So he might be one that you look to on trade. But again, you've got to get the right pick, and you can't empty out with all your experienced players. But that's where it's a balance. Like if you say, all right, Rioli's gone, Bolton's gone, Lynch is gone.
Baker's going to be another one
Baker's
on the trade block.
Yeah.
But you say you're going to retain a few experienced players. It's a tough sell to them. If you're going to go to them, look, we're going to trade out all these players and we're going to rebuild. So hopefully you're in for the journey, which is going to be 4 or 5 years.
Well, the other option is as well, you get those trade the talent, get the draft picks in, and then on trade the draft picks for talent. Like, so if you get 3 or 4 first rounders, then you can go and shop for 2 first rounders and try and rip a star out of somewhere else. They should make a phone call to Luke Parker, for instance. He couldn't get into Sydney's team for a long time. Perfect fit. Like, get him through the midfield, I think. He's still going to be a leader. He's going to show those other kids as well, whether Dusty wants to go on or not. But if they got 3, 4 first rounders potentially from on trading, then I'd go and try and rip a star out of somewhere.
Yeah. Here's a question for you without notice. Richmond plays St Kilda right now, this week coming. Who would you rather be a fan of over the next few years?
Over the next few years, I think St Kilda.
Yeah.
I think the upside to them is still there. I think once Ross gets the balance right of offense, defense, I think that they've showed their ability to defend the ground really well. If they can get offense going, which they did a couple of weeks ago for a fortnight, and then Brisbane tore them apart. But I think St Kilda have more upside. If you can get King going, get him up and about, get his work rate right, I think St Kilda still have enough upside.
Yeah, I'd go St Kilda's list and what they've got. Gubby Allen's pulling that list together with Rossi's guidance. Yeah, I'd be going with them. But it is an attraction to support a club like Richmond.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing 16 games at the MCG and you've got this massive crowd and you've been sport rotten for the last decade, yes, it'd be hard not to support. But, I think as far as list is concerned, the evolution of St Kilda's will be better.
I will say it's outstanding that Richmond are going to win the Wooden Spoon.
Oh, it's great. It's great for content. It's great for our show. Yeah.
First time ever they've come 18th. So that's good.
Outstanding. All right, this week, big games everywhere you look. Starts Friday night. Do the Swans bounce back after a depressing loss, insipid performance against Port Adelaide? Collingwood, who you're still half keen on, Ryan?
I am still half keen, but I have tipped Sydney in this game. I just think... how can you see them losing another one? Like, this is the game. I kind of look at this like Essendon a week ago. You're expecting their stars to step up. They've kind of been called out a lot in the media this week. They're at home. There's just no excuses for them to lose this. So, if I'm having a bet, I'm taking Sydney 1-39.
You got one mob that are just questioning themselves now in Sydney up against Collingwood that have come off the biggest game of the year. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to be fascinated to hear from John Longmire pre-game to hear how he's approached this week. How has he tried to get his players reset to go again? Yeah, I've got to go Sydney in this one. But, looking forward to this game in front of another full house. I think the last 4 or 5 games have been full houses at the SCG.
Craig McRae, the story came out that he walked into the meeting on Saturday night with clown shoes on and lemons and juggled for 5 minutes in the team meeting.
5 minutes? That's impressive in itself.
And his messaging apparently was around that Scotty Pendlebury's footprint on the club and the game's been so big. Did Lee ever do anything like that?
No. Lee didn't quite go down the comedy path that Fly does. Very different personalities, but I mean, so much of their coaching is the same, and I think Craig quotes Lee in numerous press conferences. But how refreshing is Craig McRae in the way he's gone about it? I mean, we see the modern athlete come through and expressing themselves, and he's done it beautifully. But no, I didn't know about that, and I didn't know he could juggle.
Yeah, apparently really impressive as well. So.
But he was the essentially he was the in a nice way, he was the team clown. He was the energy in the team. He was the energy for the footy trips or the Mad Mondays. Quite a character.
Any stories you want to share? Or?
No.
Well, I will. The first year he retired, you would have been finished, I think.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So he retired. He turned up first day of pre-season. They used to do a running.
Oh, I did too.
A 5K or a 3K or something.
He did too.
And
memory.
He rolled in. Esky, deck chair and sat there and drank and watched him do the time trial.
So that was down at Cooperoo, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, so first night he's gone to training. How good is that? But he'd do he'd set up, so the shuttle run or the beep test was the big thing back in those days, the endurance test basically, and he'd set up that for Mad Monday. So all the young blokes that would get in, so 10 a.m, beep test.
Wow,
there's a bit of consumption of
that might be our Mad Monday for the podcast.
maybe.
So they were still going when I arrived. I think we had to get rid of them because of the world's changing, Lynchy. But
yes.
It's outstanding. Saturday afternoon, this is a ripper as well. 2nd v 4th, the Brisbane Lions take on the Giants. At the Gabba, I'm sure Lynchy will be there. Are you going down Friday night?
Yeah, got Friday night and then the next game. Yes, Saturday morning, and that'll be a ripper. Looks like Josh Kelly should be back for the Giants as well. So huge, and Eric Hipwood will come back into the side, you'd imagine. So, you'd imagine he goes forward. But, it'll be a great matchup. And, because... Yeah, the Giants are doing enough at the moment. They're just not flying. They're making the most of their moments, but they still need to find some more form.
I'm intrigued if they send someone to Lachie Neale, because we've seen the Gold Coast allow him to run around. The start of the game last week, I don't know what St Kilda were doing. They were trying to get a +1 behind the ball, give up a +1 at stoppage, so it just allowed Neale and the midfielders to get going. You have to almost tag it, don't you? Because you could potentially win a third round, though.
Yeah, it's very hard to tip against Brisbane here at home, I think. They've been elite in the clearances over the last 5 weeks as well, and I think that's an area the Giants have struggled with. So, Brisbane very short in this game, and as you said, Lachie Neale firming massively in the Brownlow betting. I'd be very confident in taking him at least 30+.
30+.
Yeah, he gets tagged. Has to get tagged.
Has to get attention.
Has to get tagged, and especially the midfield concerns that the Giants have had. They lost the first 8 centre clearances on the weekend, getting pumped. I mean, they just got to do something in there. But I think you've got to. He just doesn't fumble, does he? I mean, you've got to put pressure on him. Yeah. So, but I'm with you as far as who would be a pick for the Brownlow medal. He gets votes. He just gets votes.
Who's taking him off him?
Well, he's putting on a clinic at the moment as well for the last 6 or 7 weeks. And I think that's different to Heaney. Heaney was losing votes to Goulden at the very least, a little bit Warner towards the middle of the year. But Lachie Neale, incredible.
The only one's potentially Zorko, but I don't think he'll take enough off him. I think Lachie Neale's...
Maybe Rayner too, because Rayner's kicking goals now.
Goals.
But
Lachie was doing that as well, though.
He grabs his 1 or 2 or something. But there was one game, didn't he have? He had 23 and 3 goals at half time.
Yeah, against the Crows, I think it was.
I think I asked Nixie at half time, put any time in to at least put his photo up on the wall. So anyone in danger of following this bloke.
He is short, but you can still see him.
Well, you can tell which one he is because he's got the agate in his hand.
Yeah.
So that bloke with the ball in his hand, stop him.
He's got the little birds, the swallows on his arm.
Real sort of random, almost liver style, just random.
There's a fair few
it's
of them.
called patchwork tattoos. It's a thing now. It's a big thing.
Is it? Is that what you're doing?
No, that's not what I'm doing.
He's going for sleeve. North Melbourne, West Coast is an interesting one as well. We know what you're leaning towards, Ryan, after the snapshot, but that sets up as an interesting game as well.
Yeah, I've gone with West Coast there, down in Hobart. I know North are typically pretty hard to beat down there, but Harley Reid didn't play when these two sides met 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I just think West Coast are a very sneaky, dangerous kind of team right now. They're playing with some real confidence, and so are North, so this should be a ripping game, and I think this will be probably 2 goals in it either way.
Should be a good game down there. Fremantle and Geelong. Lynchy over in the West, 6 v 5th. Ramifications for both teams.
Huge. Yeah, I think I'd be going Fremantle. I think you touched on before their midfield. Midfield depth is good. It's probably where Geelong struggle a little. They're doing a lot right, but I think Fremantle win that one. And then, I mean...
We don't really need to touch on this. Essendon and Gold Coast, we assume that Essendon will get the job done.
Can you assume that, though, with Essendon?
Well, Gold Coast refused to wear the white shorts. They refuse to even pack their footy boots, half of them, when they go on the road. So
looking forward to Jed Walder centre half-back. That'll happen. Has to happen.
Saturday night's an interesting one because do we trust Port Adelaide yet? I think I'm leaning towards yes. Melbourne could pull one out of the bag. Can they get it done?
Yeah, I'll go Port. I still got the question mark you just flagged then, but Melbourne are cooked. So their season's gone, and it might be just the drop off straight after that defeat last week.
Often when we were at Port Adelaide, we put a target, put Max Gawn up on the board and just went after him. I think they'll probably do that.
So what you do? What's that mean?
Just bump. So any opportunity you got, if you got a chance to tackle, have a little wrestle with him on the ground, because he rucks pretty much 100% of the game, and he's their number one weapon, I think, and I still believe that about Melbourne.
So just on that, so if you bumping him, and we used to do the same sort of thing, we'd pick a player, and it was just like if you're near him, just bump into him, fall on him, just make it a long day for him. What I'd be interested if that happens again on the weekend. If Melbourne don't fly the flag for their captain, I reckon we've seen that in the past, and Max is there fighting 2 or 3 opposition players by himself. I want to see Melbourne, especially now, they've dropped away, fly the flag for one of the greatest players Melbourne's ever had and support him. Don't let people come up and bump him.
9:51 Tuesday morning, breaking news, Dustin Martin has retired effectively immediately.
No way.
302 games. So Dustin Martin calls it quits, effective immediately, played his last game of AFL footy. We probably should touch on him before we wrap up the show.
Hang on, Dylan's just calling me.
The duffel coat's gone now, absolutely gone.
Wow, that's huge.
That is huge, and you say touch on him. We haven't got that long, but greatest big game player of all time. I think just the way he just ripped big games apart. Remember, I was doing. I'm not sure I can speak about it. The Norm Smith medal, but you're getting in the last quarter and you're thinking, well, what way are my votes going? And he just kicks another goal and
gets 2020.
No, before that, but he just ripped the game to pieces, and he did that. The 2020 at the Gabba, again, late, just rips it out of the jaws of victory for Geelong. What a great player. That's a huge announcement. I mean, there's been rumours bubbling for quite a while that he'd walk away from the game straight after his 300th, or even then go to the Gold Coast Suns. But, massive announcement, and what a great player.
Yeah. One of the great enigmas, too, up there with Tony Lockett. You don't hear much from him very often, and I think that sort of contributes to the narrative around him that makes him so great. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say if he comes out into the media here.
I don't think he will. I don't think he'll do. I think he'll just sail off into the sunset, a little bit like Buddy. I'd imagine he'll probably end up somewhere on the Gold Coast hinterland. They all seem to do that. And absolute superstar. Still remember the 2020 prelim. He was probably a difference again, and then went on and won another Norm Smith the week after against Geelong. Absolutely outstanding player, outstanding career, and
Is he another player that changed the game? Who was the midfielder prior to him that would push forward and kick goals like that? We talk about the Martin role, De Goey, Petrarca do it.
Bontempelli.
I think he was probably the original.
Yeah, I think he was the first that really did that. That powerful midfielder that could go forward and just a hard matchup.
Yeah, well, you'd almost give him Pagan's paddock and just give him the whole 50 and say, you go to work, and the defender's bumhole would be twitching.
Yeah.
But he could run through the midfield, have 30 and kick 3, but then go full forward and kick 6.
Well, and that's incredible. The thing. So he'd start in the midfield, run around while the ball's there, then just walk forward. Yeah. And especially when that role was new, you're thinking, well, where's he going? So the defenders all got their man, and they he wanders down, and so there's panic because they've got a +1. So it took a while for clubs to sort of get onto that. But then when they got onto it, you still been able to stop him in a one-on-one situation was near impossible.
Yeah, congratulations to Dustin Martin. 3 flags, 3 Norm Smith medals, Brownlow medal. Did it all in the game. We'll quickly move on to the Sunday games just before we wrap up. Carlton Hawthorn.
As I said at the start of the show, basically an elimination final for both clubs. I'm curious to see what Michael Voss changes in this game looking ahead. I feel like they're relying very heavily on Patrick Cripps and Sam Walsh at the moment, the Blues, and Curnow probably needs to have a big game as well. With the Coleman on the line, Hawthorn, they're definitely up to this, so going to be a cracking game.
We can't wait for this game. It would be fascinating to see because the bigs in the forward line would be too big for Hawthorn, and just whether Hawthorn's speed is too quick for Carlton. So fascinated, but surely Carlton get that done.
Richmond St Kilda at Marvel Stadium. I don't know whether Dusty will even do a lap at Marvel Stadium. They don't really like going there, so not sure whether we'll obviously find out more as the week goes. But you'd be leaning towards St Kilda, even though they got pounded last week by the Lions, and then. The last game on Sunday afternoon sets up as an interesting game because the Adelaide Crows are certainly playing better footy. Bulldogs are probably one of the form teams of the comp. Can the Crows cause an upset here?
Feels like a danger game.
No. Surely.
No?
Just straight up no.
Nah. I think the Dogs, absolutely. The best of Adelaide could challenge. But the Dogs have just got themselves going. Was that 4 in a row for the first time this season?
Yeah.
Just got themselves going. I think if they're going to frank what we were talking about before about them being a grand final favourite, surely they get it done.
We talk about Port Adelaide and Essendon, those sorts of teams. Can we trust them? I think the Dogs are another one that you can throw in that category. This is the sort of game that the Dogs would typically lose. So, this will tell us a lot.
And if they do, they potentially, again, we're talking about being in a grand final. Could miss finals. But another ripping show, Ryan, before we wrap up, multi for the week.
Yes, you put me on the spot here.
Sorry.
Tommy. I've got to get it on my phone.
And so, because I wasn't in the segment while Ryan gets that. So what happened to you last week?
So last week we got 3 from 4. So we started on Saturday night, Collingwood at the line, which they covered. They won the game.
Nice.
They were not favourites into that. We had the Giants to beat Hawthorn, which
never in doubt.
Oh, never in doubt. And then Fremantle, we took Fremantle on lines because we did it on Monday morning, I think. So we didn't have a lot of markets, but we just said, I went with the favourites. I thought Fremantle would get it done against Essendon.
Yeah, stiff.
That was all over, sort of. Halfway through the last, I thought.
Well, you didn't say we were home, did you?
No, I didn't say we were home, but I almost sent a message to Ryan saying,
we're home.
Brisbane were up by 50 odd at half time as well. I was like, this is all over. And then all of a sudden they just fall.
And then you went quiet on me. I didn't hear from you at all on Sunday, and I had to message you.
I was out for dinner with a mate and his parents, and just apologise about that. But it was, depressing when you go down by a point.
Happens to the best of us.
So this week?
This week, I've gone West Coast plus 8.5 against North Melbourne, and I've also gone Essendon to cover minus 12.5 against Gold Coast.
I've gone back to the well. Sarong 30 plus on Saturday afternoon against Geelong, and Marcus Bontempelli 2 plus on Sunday afternoon.
$13.50 for this one.
I think we're back. I think we're due for one in round 22. I think we'll get it done.
Blundstone Arena has got warts on it, I reckon.
And you can find that in the open group on the Ned's app.
Yes. Great spruik there, mate. Good on you.
Share, like, subscribe, do all the rest of it. Thanks, Lynchy.
Thank you. Look forward to another great weekend of footy.
Thanks, Ryan.
Good on you, Rocky.
And thank you, punters, for downloading and listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Enjoyed the podcasts? Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.